wildlife corridors.
I called Mark the next day and talked to him about it, so why don't you respond, Mark?
Our environmental documentation shouldn't have any further effect.
So we're not a designated wildlife corridor?
Within that, no.
We're not within one of those? Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's go on to managers' reports. Assistant General Manager Mark Ban. Human Resources Jill Trudeau.
Thank you very much, President Mays. Just very quickly, I wanted to let you, the board members, know that I was honored yesterday to be at the town offices to participate in an interview panel for an administrative assistant. We looked at 4 candidates, and we were the 3rd panel that these candidates had gone through, so they were the finalists. And it was just a pleasure to be there to help them out with that.
Thank you. Thank you. Rochelle Clayton, CFO. Thank you. Public Information Associate Jennifer Poland.
I have nothing.
All right. General Manager Ed Music. Nothing. Future agenda items requested by the board at this point? Seeing none, let's go on. And we will call for the adjournment at 5:48, and we will reconvene in 12 minutes. So have a good time of 12 minutes. Take a breather, talk to, and fellowship. Good evening. We call this Board of Directors meeting for High Desert Water District for the regular meeting of Wednesday, January 15th to order. And I've asked Mr. Muncy, Director Muncy, if he would lead us in the pledge. Please stand as he leads us. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Director Huff.
Here.
Vice President Statham.
Here.
President Mays.
Here.
Director Graham. Here. And Director Muncy.
Here.
Before I ask for the approval, we'd like to welcome one of our fellow workers from 29 Palms Water District, Mr. Coolish, and welcome here tonight, and Mr. Watley, who will be presenting a little bit later, and also Mr. Stukel from the town. So thank you for coming. We have the approval of the agenda. I will entertain a motion and a second, please.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Graham, seconded by Director Muncy. It's hard to write down the names that fast, so that's why I am a little slower. Okay, let's go on to number 4, public comment.
Roll call vote.
Roll call. Roll call.
Director Muncy.
Yes.
Director Graham.
Yes.
President Mays.
Yes?
Vice President Statham.
Yes.
Director Huff.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's go on with number 4, public comment. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address the board on matters within the board's jurisdiction that are not listed on the agenda. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. State law prohibits the board of directors from discussing or taking action on items not included on the agenda. I'm assuming Ms. Sturgis?
Thank you. Good evening, Margaret Sturgis of Yucca Valley. Yes, good evening, Margot Sturgis of Yucca Valley. I just want to make a comment regarding public comments. And looking at the minutes, for example, on stamp page 4, it says that Margot Sturgis commented on the wastewater project. And just previous to that, it says Ramon Mendoza commented on on-lot improvements. And another citizen commented on the wastewater project. And I understand, I'm not asking for verbatim minutes, but I think that when somebody comes up here to support something or not, I would like to see that being reflected. because I know that when people go back and they look at the minutes and what have you, and they see, Margot Sturgis of Yucca Valley commented on the wastewater project. Well, what did Margot say? I mean, I know that I support the wastewater project, and I know that I didn't come up here and speak against it. And I just think that if you could include that, when you have citizens that come and attend, and they have voiced an opinion, pro or con, that maybe that could be reflected. I'm not asking for verbatim, but if you could just possibly consider that fact. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. Okay, let's go on to consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are acted upon by one motion, unless a member wishes an item to be acted upon separately, in which case it will be removed from the consent calendar. A is demand list 81409-81495. B is wastewater demand list 1689 through 1703. C is payroll demand list for December 24th, 2013 and January 9th, 2014. Is there a motion? And a
So
second?
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Statham, seconded by Director Graham. Roll call, please.
Director Graham,
Yes.
Director Muncy,
Yes.
Director Huff,
Yes.
Vice President Statham,
Yes.
and President Mays.
Yes, and I recuse myself on demand list 81486 and 81489 because my son-in-law works for that company. Okay, let's go on to number 6, the solar feasibility. Board of Directors to receive a PowerPoint presentation delivered by Mr. Mike Watley of SunPower regarding the feasibility of generating solar power. Assistant General Manager Mark Ban will introduce.
Thank you, President Mays, members of the board. At the request of the board, staff has been evaluating the feasibility of solar generation. As of late, that environment is looking a lot more promising, and I've asked Mr. Michael Watley from SunPower to give us a presentation on the current environment and the district's benefits out of solar.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year, and thank you very much for having me here to speak with you about this opportunity. My name is Mike Watley. I work for SunPower Corporation, and that is a solar company, and I'm here to try to bring some attention to an opportunity that may be a good fit for the district, and this is really just an introductory presentation to the opportunity. And I'd certainly like to take questions during the presentation. I'm okay with that. I'll try to be aware of anybody who's got something to ask. I'll try to be brief about this, and just as a process check, is 15 minutes appropriate to kind of go through this? That sounds good. Okay, and with that, I'll go ahead and begin. And everybody can see? Sounds good. So the agenda for today's discussion is, I thought I'd just give you a brief SunPower introduction about who we are, options for solar in California, and really, this is meant to take a step back, not talk about a particular proposal just yet, but what is the policy in California and what are the opportunities that really you can take advantage of? And then I think it's also appropriate to talk about strategy, big picture. Build now, build later, wait or go forward. And what kind of program makes the most sense? And then what do the ROIs look like? And then I have some suggested next steps with which Mark has been helpful to sort of help me gauge whether or not that's something that would interest the district. So moving on, just a quick word about SunPower. We're a US-based manufacturer, and we're known for quality and performance. Here's some basic facts about our firm. We have a lot of systems operating worldwide. We did have $2.4 billion in revenue last year, so we're not a small company. And we have extensive experience with water districts. I think last I counted, we did 22 water districts in California. And I'm happy to provide a list, and we're continuing to work with water districts and community service districts ongoing. You can look us up on NASDAQ, ticker symbol SPWR, and that's just some basic facts there. So one thing that really differentiates us is that we are the manufacturer. We're not just a developer who's shopping for the lowest cost panel, finding maybe something that's Chinese or European manufactured. We are the designer and manufacturer of the modules since 1985. And we're known for the highest efficiency cells. We have the world record on efficiency, and that basically means more watts per square foot or per acre in a large case like yours. And we're really about quality, reliability, and performance. That's what we're known for. And these solar cells and modules, they're constructed into systems. And SunPower also provides the systems. We have our patented ground-based tracker technology. This is the kind of system that rotates east to west and follows the sun. It's basically meant to capture as much solar energy as possible throughout the course of the day. And on the upper left there, you can see that sort of a side view of one of the tracker assemblies with several modules attached. And this is not a new technology that we've deployed. It's evolved over time. It's gotten better and cheaper and higher performance. We have, to date, 686 megawatts installed. So there's a lot of track record and a lot of history with regard to this particular technology. I pulled this one up because I wanted to find an older system that was in, frankly, a hot and arid environment. And this system is actually performing quite well. This is what we call 1 megawatt. This is a typical 1 megawatt installation, in this case for Las Vegas Water District. I like this picture just because of the length of the fields, but this is a 28 megawatt project for Florida Power and Light. Same tracker technology.
Hey, Mike?
Yes.
On the previous slide, how much area does that cover? How many
Well,
acres?
This one is about 6.5 acres to 7, but the technology has evolved since 2006 when this is installed. We're actually looking at about 4.5 acres per megawatt for today's system. Thank you for that question. And then I thought, I like this picture because it's the first megawatt for the largest solar plant in the world, the 579 megawatt Antelope Valley Solar Project. Happy to tell you more about that. It crosses over between Kern and LA counties near Rosamond. And that's basically the technology that would be brought to water districts like yourself for opportunities we're about to discuss in a moment. But this is sort of a quick snapshot of the kind of work that we've done. All right, so getting into the actual opportunity itself, and I know it's a mouthful, and I meant to put a little picture of Aretha Franklin up in the corner, but the RES-BCT opportunity, Renewable Energy Self-Gen Bill Credit Transfer. It is a policy that was enacted by Assembly Bill 2466 and then later amended and expanded. But this is a program that has been instituted by law and now is part of utility tariffs. That third bullet says, allows public agencies only generate electricity at one site and create bill credits for surplus energy not used on site. So the traditional solar model for many years, since 1998, was you build solar where the meter is. If you have this building, you put solar there. If you have this house, you can put solar there. Public agencies came forward to the state and said, look, we've got a lot of meters all over the place. And in your case, you have 44 Edison accounts. And it doesn't make economic sense to build 44 solar projects at 44 locations, 44 interconnection agreements, 44 O&M agreements. Why not build it at one location, capture economies of scale, and virtually serve, vis-a-vis bill credits, these other accounts? And there's trade-offs to that strategy we can get into, but that's the principle, is build one grand unified project at one location that would offset your energy costs at other locations throughout your district. And it really is the best value opportunity today for public agencies. And I think you guys are a great example, and later in the presentation we actually have some analysis in that regard, but any questions at the moment? Okay. So I thought I'd talk about strategy. Not necessarily this particular program, but building solar, quote unquote, now, not meaning today, but in the near-term future versus building it later, and things to keep in mind about policies and other programs that are out there that help benefit solar. For example, solar rebates. You might have heard the California Solar Initiative rebate, CSI as it's called. It's presently in step 9 out of 10 steps. And I'm anticipating, just based on history, it's probably going to be about one more year before it's fully subscribed. Then it moves into step 10. Not the end of the world if you don't get a CSI rebate for a project, but it does help boost the economics. The RESBCT program itself, it's limited to 124 megawatts in Southern California Edison territory, 250 statewide. And right now, as of the end of December, 19 megawatts were in the queue. Half of them are mine. And I'm anticipating it's about a 2-year time frame before that's occupied. So that's not a reason to rush, but it is something to keep in the back of your minds as you're thinking about the RESBCT program. And then, to a lesser extent, but I hear this come up from various customers about Assembly Bill 327. I'm not necessarily the expert in that, but basically has given utilities rights to redefine net metering. Basically, house projects like solar that are used to generate their own electricity and avoid utility costs, the utilities will have the opportunity to redefine that sort of benefit structure for those customers. And those rules will not apply to projects until this 5% cap is reached. I should have put a footnote here, but we're presently at about 1.3, 1.4%. I think it's going to be 3 years before we get to this particular cap. But again, just wanted to be clear about the timing aspect. So this does indicate that building sooner rather than later does have some benefits, particularly with the CSI aspect. California Solar Initiative. It's a state rebate that helps improve the economics of a solar project. You can get it for your house, and large commercial customers, public agencies can also get it for their projects as well.
Is that absorbed by the company or by the district? Do we receive it, or does the company receive it?
You receive that rebate, assuming you have an ownership structure. So if you decide to purchase the capital known as a solar project, and you own that solar project, the rebate would go directly to the district.
Okay.
If this was a power purchase agreement where you're just buying energy and SunPower owns the system, we would get the rebate.
Okay.
Those are kind of the two models. Okay. Another sort of strategy consideration, build NEM or build RESBCT. I should have defined NEM, but NEM is the traditional net energy metering. It's a long-standing policy in California. It's what you would take advantage of if you were to put solar on your roof at your home. You're basically, as the term implies, netting the energy that you would otherwise consume from the utility. So I don't want to preclude the option that some of your sites, those 44 meters, you could build a solar project at that meter pursuant to a NEM policy, as opposed to one giant project at one location pursuant to a RESBCT policy. They have different features, like the CSI rebate are both applicable. So just to be clear, you do get a CSI rebate for whatever meter you connect to. But in terms of saving money on other meters, when you install a NEM project at a 1 meter, it's that 1 meter that benefits, and that's it. If there's a meter across the street, it's going to need its own program, for example. But RESBCT helps deliver savings to other meters that otherwise can't do solar.
But Mike,
Yes.
you wouldn't build it then to exceed the capacity of the meter. So there would never be a rebate, correct? Why would you spend money to generate more power than you need at that site under a NEM?
The rebate will be limited to up to the 1 megawatt equivalent of the RESBCT meter. So I assume you're referring to if you were to build a large RESBCT project.
No, I'm talking about if we did a small NEM
Okay.
at 1 meter.
Right.
We wouldn't build it bigger than what would be used
Correct.
at that 1 meter.
That's right. You would build it to size it to that meter.
Right.
Exactly.
So we wouldn't have to worry about spinning it back or whatever.
Correct.
Building an account.
That's right. And then lastly, just to capture economies of scale, the way solar capital, basically like many industries, the bigger it gets, the lower dollar per unit cost it is. And so, for example, building on your rooftop, the latest data I saw might be $5 a watt. Building a large project of the kind that I would propose to the district would be on the order of $3 to $3.50 a watt. And that's simply just because of larger amortization of the same types of costs that would be incurred, like permitting, environmental, not at a house obviously, but the same types of permitting costs that would be required. Okay, so busy slide, but Working with Mark, I tried to come up with several possibilities of where solar, what kind of solar and when would be built. I'll take you through like case one, for example. It might be good to just walk through that example. In case one, the build site is at well 9W. That's a particular location that I was introduced to you, as opposed to TFAC means treatment facility. So you could build at well 9W or build at the treatment facility as an example. You could build it pursuant to either NEM or Res BCT. And you could build it now or later. And so based on those metrics of now or later, NEM or Res BCT or the site, there's an optimal size in kilowatts DC. And frankly, well 9W is not the biggest user in your account, it's a big one. But if you were to build the solar project the way, Ed, you described, just to size it, just to the load, it'd be a 104 kilowatt project at that site under NEM. But if it were Res BCT, it could be much larger, as indicated by those other numbers that you see there. And then for reasons we can discuss, the green check marks mean, yes, that's something that is a positive feature, a positive attribute of that installation. Like case one, you would save money on that site. You would avoid what I call future AB 327 risk, because you get it in quote unquote now. And you would get the CSI rebate. And it does have a calculable ROI. And there's standard assumptions, which I know is blocked on my screen, but I can explain those to you. But there's keeping those assumptions constant. You can look at the ROI for each one of these cases. And frankly, the ROIs are diluted when you start talking about building later, because Res BCT is unlikely to be around, or the CSI rebate certainly won't be around very much longer. The ROIs are still very healthy for later projects like Case 5. Build at well 9W, pursuant to Res BCT, but don't do it now. See what other peers are doing and build it later. Well, yeah, it has a high ROI, but I would caution that you're not going to get the CSI rebate, and you may, that exclamation point, you may not save on other meters, just because is the Res BCT program going to be around in a year or two? So this is basically my attempt at a risk matrix alongside some projected ROIs on what these projects might look like for these different scenarios. Return on investment, right. It's gain minus cost over cost.
Can you just, in general, talk about 3A and 3B, why you think that would be the best way?
Thank you.
And 3B is for our treatment facility, even though it wouldn't be located there, correct?
So, yes, thank you for that. I learned from Mark that there's a treatment facility to be installed at a future date. I'm not privy to all the details, but what that tells me is that that's more energy usage that will be incurred by the district. There's an opportunity to offset that energy and save the district money on energy costs. 3A is what I would consider to be the no regrets. If you were to build Res BCT now for the district of your size with what you use today, it's an 835 kilowatt project. If, it sounds like when, the treatment facility goes in, you would have the ability to expand that project another 417. And so there's strategies, of course, if you were to plan on that strategy of a phase 1, phase 2, which is case 3A and 3B. Build the 835 now, wait till the treatment facility comes online, and then build an expansion project to help offset that energy. Remember, you're building all the solar at well 9W, which is, I'm sure, a long distance away from the treatment facility. But the point is that the credits that are created from the excess energy can be thrown back at the treatment facility's account. So when I was thinking about this in terms of the lowest risk and the relatively highest value, 3A just comes to the top of my list. May not necessarily be the highest ROI. However, it has more certainty on execution of the program. I think case 4, which is the sum of 3A and 3B, I apologize if this is too confusing, but case 4, basically is build it all at once right now. There's a question as to whether or not, from a policy perspective, will the utility allow you to do that? They don't see this load at the treatment facility. It's going to be online in the future. Let's say the utility gives you a pass and says, fine, you can build the whole thing now and basically save on doing one installation one time. We did consider that you would be forfeiting credits for however long the treatment facility is not online. And that's built into the economics, and it still works out to be a viable option. But there's some risk behind building it all at once. So when I put that case 3A in green, I tend to think of, we know what your usage is today. We know what the tariffs say today. We know what's available today. So if it were to be built now, the benefit cost ratio or the ROI is actually really straightforward to calculate. It becomes less straightforward when you start talking about future build-outs. So hopefully I didn't confuse anybody too much, but happy to take any questions. Yes.
What does the exclamation point mean?
That's my creative idea of something that's in between the check mark and the X. It's,
I need to be clear in my mind. You said if we build it now at 9W, that we would build up those credits, so when we built the treatment plant, those credits would go to the treatment plant. Then I heard you say something about if we did it later, and did both of them, we would forfeit some of the credit?
yeah, so I think I can follow you. On case 3A, if you build 835, 100% of the credits would go somewhere in your district. But none of them
Have to
can,
be used right then and there? You could build up the credit
over a 12-month accounting period.
just over 12 months?
Just over 12
It
months.
takes you 3 years to build the plant and have it operational, you're going to lose?
You're going to lose the 417 piece of this number right here. So you're correct. In case 4, if you build 1,253 kilowatts, about 80% of it can be used by the district, and the 40% and the 20% of it would be forfeited back to the utility. And this is an interesting analysis of, is there benefit in doing a lower cost, larger installation now versus doing it twice? Recognizing that there would be some lost credits until the treatment facility comes online. If the treatment facility were to come online, say, in 2 years, and the solar were to come online in 1 year, you would forfeit 1 year of credits for that incremental piece.
I don't understand why we would forfeit. Why would not the utility company pay us for the credits they're getting?
That's a great question. Utilities, at least throughout the country, don't have a history necessarily of paying retail users for generation they produce themselves. They'll give you a credit. So it's almost like going to Costco when you return something and they may not give you cash back, but they'll give you store credit. And so that's the nature of utilities, is that as a retail user, if you're going to produce your own energy, you're going to get a credit. And the same is true if you put solar on your roof at your home. The utility is not going to pay you at least a material amount. There are some nuances to that, but it's worthless, for excess energy that you give back to the utility that you didn't use yourself. So when we size these systems, that kilowatt column, we try to size them so that virtually 100% of the credits and the energy you create is used somewhere at the district. If we built anything larger than those numbers, there would be a probability that you would forfeit the credits because you'd overproduce, you'd make more energy, it would go back to the grid, and the utility's not going to give you credit for excess energy beyond a certain number.
Why could the credit not be used to offset the cost of this facility?
It would. In the 835, it would. So
Director Graham, I think he's trying to say that 835, that's the maximum size we should build based upon our current usage. So if we build anything bigger, we're incurring construction costs, and we're not going to get any benefit for that additional capacity.
Thank you. That's right. And that 835 is intended to serve 44 meters. You have a 45th meter about to come online in a year or 2 or 3, the treatment facility. That 45th meter is actually going to be pretty large, and it can justify another 417 at well 9W.
And when we met with Mike, we thought option 3A and 3B, because when our treatment plant's going to come online, you know, the solar panels may have come down in price, they may be more efficient, so why not defer those until we actually need them and can take the benefit from it and keep our outlay of capital costs limited to the 835?
I might also inform the board that Well 9 West is located on Site 3's property there, just to the south of our recharge ponds.
Is there an advantage to a property that has a slight southern slope to it?
Yeah.
So when you do the east-west axis, you're already raised up and facing south a little bit? Does that
Yes.
give you some additional?
Absolutely, it does. It's not significant, but every little bit helps. In fact, Castaic Lake Water Agency has that. They have about a 1 to 2% tilt, as you described, on the land. And they're having a east-west tracking system, but it's got a little bit of south bias, and it boosts the output a little bit more, and it's just every little bit helps. So yes, to answer your question, it's not a significant difference, but it
So
is.
like 1 or 2%?
Right, and these systems, generally the trackers, they can tolerate up to 5% grade, which is actually, you know, from visually you can see the 5%, but I haven't run across that too often.
I'm not sure what we are, but I doubt it's 5%.
Yeah, it's less than that. It might be, it's virtually zero, at least from my limited perspective. I visited the site. Yes, sir.
Question. In case 4, how many acres would have to be bladed to build that much water?
6.
I say safely 6, because that would be enough for some laydown, access roads, a little buffer space. I think at the end of the day, it's probably going to be closer to 5 in terms of the actual footprint, but in terms of all the interference that goes on from working the project, I think 6 is a safe number. And at the end of the day, it might be a 5-acre footprint, including the fence line. I think I have one follow-up slide to this. I'm happy to go back if there's any questions. Whoops. This was case 3A, 3B, and 4 that you saw before, but this is probably getting a little too into the weeds. I wasn't sure if this is something that people wanted to follow, but there's a strategy of what tariff would you target to get onto. That's a very important aspect. What's the optimal size? You saw that. I want to give you an indication of the turnkey CapEx. You know, these are not $1 million projects, these are not $10 million projects, but just to give you an idea, because sometimes I find customers want to see just a general, how big are these systems. We can calculate what is the all-in value of solar per kilowatt hour in each of these cases. It's worth close to 11 cents a kilowatt hour. What that means is for every kilowatt hour that comes out of the project, that's an 11-cent credit, if you will. What you do with that 11 cents is subject to the RESB-CT tariff. You have to name your 44 accounts. You have to designate what percent of what goes where. And that's how you allocate the bill credits. There's a CSI rebate estimate in there. You get it for 3A. It's worth about $226. You don't get it at 3B because that meter already got it. It's the same location, so you don't get it twice. And in case 4, it's the same number. Now, life cycle net operating savings. And there's a footnote there which, if I can read it correctly, there's some terms as to what I assumed in the life cycle analysis. But there's a number there that becomes the basis for the calculation of the ROI. So you can see in case 3A, which is what, you know, I felt seemed to be the safest approach, had about a $10 million life cycle net benefit. The expansion project would add another 5. Versus doing it all. Oh, I noticed, I forgot to tell you this. I put under, in the column optimal kilowatts DC, 4 blocks, 2 blocks, 6 blocks. You might have noticed from those images before, they're very rectangular looking solar blocks. And to keep our costs as low as possible and to be as most competitive in the market, we build modules of solar projects by block. And so essentially your district, you're a 4-block size district today. Now the treatment facility, when it goes in, it's such a large facility, at least by the estimates that were shared with me, it's the equivalent to adding another 50% to the solar project. It's that large. So I'm happy to, I think I did deliver, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What is the lifespan of the solar panel? How long has the solar panel lasted in the last 30 years?
Yeah, we assume 25. We have documentation to show a 30-year life, but that starts to really become negligible, economics out that far. The reason I chose 30 is because my financing source is willing to finance for 30. SunPower does provide a 25-year warranty on the panels, and we do have the track record and the financial backing to back that warranty for the 25-year term.
What causes the panels to go out?
That's a great question, and in fact,
It's not moving.
right, panels fail from mainly two mechanisms. One is cracking, and two is corrosion. The cracking simply because these things are outside, and they're in the heat of the day, they're in the cold of the night, and there's thermal expansion, expand and contract, expand and contract. The glass, the plastics, the metal, everything expanding, contracting. And these modules over time will crack, and ours do as well. And there's a rate of cracking, if you will, of degradation, as they call it. There's also, these are manufactured devices, and so water and other materials will create some corrosion effects. And so what we've done to mitigate that is, one, we have a design that, I'm wondering if, Ed, if you would permit me if I were to share some of these solar cells with the board so they can get a look at them. I brought some
Can I
solar.
ask Another question. Here in the high desert, I think we go down to, we go down to freezing 7 degrees and we go up to 127. Where have you done this in the high desert before? Because we do really have a significant challenge for difference.
Yeah, I'm thinking here of the main part here. Start with these. Be careful with those. I can answer your question like Colorado, New Jersey. We have snow load on our systems.
You want to get on the mic so that they can record it, please?
What I'm handing out is, this is not a SunPower cell. This is not SunPower. This is what everybody manufactures. This is the very typical, I'll hand you these in a moment. One more of the old ones? Yeah, here we go. Sorry about that. So this is what everybody makes. And I'd like you to basically, don't be gentle with it. Don't take them out of the bag. But get a feel for how rigid they are and how...
Now you've done it.
These were made by one of the largest solar manufacturers in the world, Q-Cells, at one point. These are Chinese manufactured solar cells, very thin, very cheap. This is what goes on everywhere. In fact, for example, Suntech, I don't know if you heard of that company. There's more Suntech solar modules in the U.S. than any other module. They're bankrupt now, largely because they've been failing due to this type of dynamic, these stresses. What I'd like to hand you next is, hopefully I have enough of them.
I'm not going to.
Hang on a second.
I can't even touch the thing. How cool. The big tech ones.
So I'm going to hand you right now, this is a SunPower solar cell. The main difference of this is that we put a thick copper plating on the back of the solar cell. You might notice it looks different. It doesn't have any lines on the front side. The lines are all on the back. We have no contact surface on the front to interfere with sunlight. Okay.
Bob did it. Jennifer did it. I didn't.
You didn't break yours. So with the SunPower cell, and by the way, this is the same technology we've been making since 1985. All the lines are on the back. There's no lines on the front, so it's higher efficiency, less subject to exposure and corrosion. I do want you to take it and be aggressive with it and break it as well, please.
Already did.
Yeah. And you'll know it's much more rigid, and the reason being is that we're the only manufacturer, the only one, who puts a thick copper plating on the back of the plates. And these are good for electrical adhesion, for corrosion protection, frankly, for integrity. And so when they do break, they don't catastrophically break like traditional solar cells. The traditional ones, when they break, they're dead. When this one breaks, it still operates, albeit at a lower level. And this is why we had the lowest degradation rate in the industry. We have third-party reports that show that we're 4 to 5 times less degrading than our typical competitor models. By the way, SunPower being a global company, we own 300 megawatts of Chinese manufactured solar systems. This was done through various acquisitions, customer acquisitions, development firm acquisitions. We own these systems. A lot of them are in Macy's department stores. And they were manufactured by BP Solar, Canadian Solar, which is Chinese actually, Suntech, and Sharp. And they have a failure rate that's 300 times greater than our own systems. And our field supervisors are having a heck of a time. Every time they go out to a Macy's, they've got to replace 3 or 4 and restring several modules because of the failure rate of these inferior systems. We don't have that problem. In fact, at Elsinore Valley Water District, you might want to consult with their board, but it got so bad with their system that was a Chinese manufactured installed system. The O&M costs were getting too high. We just ripped out the whole system and put in SunPower modules instead, because it was just more cost effective to do that than to continue to incur the operating costs of maintaining the Chinese system. So I think it's really important that we can recognize, at least by Wall Street, that quality and performance is really important. We've been dinged for years that we're too expensive, we're too expensive. We've gotten really competitive lately. In fact, I would say that we are as cost competitive, if not better, with this tracker technology, and we have the best technology to go with it as well. And hopefully, any questions, by the way?
Is there a problem with the copper? Any theft?
So copper on the back of the solar cells, no. But copper wiring, we use a lot of aluminum for those exposed areas. Aluminum doesn't have that same type of theft value. But there is copper in parts of the system, but not nearly to the extent that we used to use it. Now we're using aluminum conductors. Yes?
This might be a question better directed to Mark. We have significant time of use constraints now with Edison, and we have to sign, as I understand it, sign a contract or letter of intent with Edison and only use electricity when we say we do, and if we have to use electricity to run the pumps in the middle of the day, it can cost us a huge amount more money. If we have a significant solar system where we're generating most of our own electricity, how will that affect these time of use rate differences?
Well, I'll let Mike testify to that as well, but we'd actually be switching our tariffs to go on to this program. So you actually get more of a benefit from having a lower tariff, I think, or a more expensive tariff than you would the other way.
I think I might be able to help answer that question if you don't mind. Up on screen here is the black curve. That's a 24-hour day on the bottom axis, and then size, kilowatts drawn. So the black line represents what you use, for example, at well 9W. And well 9W operates exactly as you described, Mr. Statham, which is it operates in the off-peak. That's midnight to 7 in the morning, and then again from 11 p.m., 9 p.m. and onward. And the reason it operates that way is that's much lower cost of electricity. So I think what I'm hearing from you is that if you were to operate at noon or 2 p.m., yes, the cost of electricity is much more punitive at those periods of time, and if you had solar, you'd be able to offset that. That's absolutely true. So in terms of what's the right tariff to be on before solar, and what's the right tariff to be on after solar, I can help with that. That's something actually Edison is really quite good at too, because they're customer service oriented, and they're also trying to make sure that you're managing your costs well. But there are different tariff choices out there for the black piece, if you will.
When does this start paying back for itself? Like first month, first year? I mean, when does it begin to? I understand the return on investment for 30 years, but when do we get to the point that we're actually making a difference? We're not paying more for this system than we're saving in electricity. Do you understand my question?
Understood. In fact, I shared this pro forma with your CFO. We try to structure these deals, even with conservative assumptions, to be cash flow positive from year one. So these are finance systems.
So year one, a whole year, we're going to be paying more.
No, cash flow positive meaning
In year one,
in year one.
so immediately.
The credits that you would receive from the operation of the solar facility would exceed any costs you would have to own the system. Operational costs, debt service, what have you.
That's day one.
That's year one. You know, day one, it might be December if it comes online and solar's just plugging along, but yeah, year one, that's the objective. And so that's the point we're really trying to bring across here, is that we can structure a deal such that, and we do this for water districts all over, to create it, make it net cash flow positive from year one. So just to use I wonder if I had those numbers up before, but let's say for sake of argument, it's $100,000 a year in annual electricity costs that are saved. I might be a little short on that, but it's an easy number to work with, $100,000. If you own the system, let's just say there's $10,000 of annual operating expenses. By the way, this is not meant to be a burden on the district. This is the O&M contractor who's taking care of the system, preventive maintenance, et cetera. And let's say the financing source is another $60,000, for example. 60 plus 10 is 70, so that way the district would have a $70,000 recurring cost to keep the system running for $100,000 of credits. So the net cash flow after that point is $30,000 in favor of the district. And that's what we try to do over time. I don't have that full analysis for you. I think that it's a great question, and I want to provide that to staff and to you so you can see that pro forma.
Yeah. Director Huff, we're assuming that if we finance the entire amount, that at the end of the day, our savings from electricity would pay 100% of the financing cost, and we'd have additional funds in the general fund from the savings. But one question I have when it goes back to the peak rates,
Okay?
if we're being charged 3 times the amount, we're still going to be charged that. Our credits, whether they're going to be used equally regardless of what our bill is, our bill's still going to be higher if we go during the prime time.
So let's say it's meter 27 off to the side, you know, some distant meter, and it operates at noon during the summer, during a hot day. Yeah, it's going to be 36 cents a kilowatt hour.
Right. We're not going to save because we have solar.
If you have solar at well 9W, and it happens to be producing hopefully many more kilowatt hours at that period than you would otherwise be consuming, it's also getting a bill credit of 36 cents a kilowatt hour at that well 9W site.
Oh, it does?
Yeah. And in fact,
okay.
you know, this is very interesting to me because I'm a numbers guy, but you got lots of choices, and it can be as high as $3 or $4 a kilowatt hour. You know, this is a program where Edison, under certain circumstances, if you can produce energy at the times they really need it, you know, they're advertising on TV, turn off your air conditioning, turn off your washer dryer, but if you're a generator producing a kilowatt hour at those particular $3, $4 kilowatt hour moments, that goes a long way to pay for a lot of power.
So even if we're not using it at $3 a kilowatt, we get credit for generating it at 3?
That's right. Now, to be fair, in the circumstance where there's an outage at the solar power plant, and outages occur, that happens. We put a performance guarantee on it to try to protect you from that, but if it happens to be down on the hottest day of the year, and Mark has to turn on well 9W at 2 in the afternoon, Edison's going to charge you that really high rate. So it's a risk analysis of, do you have confidence in the performance of the system? Do you have confidence in how you're going to operate your load?
Well, they're going to charge us whether we have a solar or not.
No, it's net metering, so no, sir. If you produce power at the time you actually were going to consume it, your meter will be registered negative. There's no charge. It becomes a credit. When
No,
the meter's
I'm saying when you
negative.
said the solar was down.
Right, when the solar is down. Right.
So whether
They'll
the
charge
solar's
you.
down or we don't have solar, we're going to still be charged the same rate.
Correct, yes, now I understand. Thank you. That's exactly right. Let's see, I don't really have much else other than, I didn't want to put the, cart in front of the horse, but I did provide for Mark and Ed and Rochelle some concepts about, if this is something that does seem attractive to the district and they want to take some initial steps to move forward, I've tried to bucket into what I call no cost next steps, low cost, and moderate investment. No cost is allow me to get my design team together and actually create a design. And the design is the first step, because when I have a site plan, I can start firming up things like costs. And in coordination with staff, confirm that we're not crossing over some water pipe or doing something that's, not appropriate. And that's something we would do at no cost, just to really get our hands wrapped around what this looks like. Low cost option, which I think is really the most important, is start your interconnection study. It's a small $800 fee to get into the queue. What this does is, $800 is, when you submit this interconnection application to Edison, they'll start taking a look at it. When you stick a power plant into their grid, Edison's going to want to know, well, how is this power plant going to affect my system and the delivery of power to all of your neighbors in the community? And they do studies and analysis, and every major power project that goes in, not your house, but every major commercial and utility project goes in, the utility will do an extensive study. It takes a long time. It can be as little as 4 months or as long as 12 months. There's a lot of moving parts in how long that takes. But you can get the projects, you can get it started in the next, in the near term with minimal risk to the district and get some initial feedback from Edison, and let's hear what they have to say. The reason being is when you put a power plant in, it may require Edison to upgrade certain components on their system because now you got this power coming out that wasn't otherwise there before. And the burden of improving their system falls upon you, the owner. But that's something you don't know until the study is done. And then some modern investment ideas, and I think this comes later, is, if you think this is something you want to move forward with, submit your CSI application. That's a $20,000 refundable deposit. If the project comes online, you get it back. CEQA studies and geotechnical studies, those are really important. And I tend to think that, based on my limited knowledge of well 9W, where it's located, this is disturbed land. So CEQA doesn't sound like it might be a big deal. In fact, you may already have a CEQA study already done because of the equipment that's already installed on site. Geotechnical is necessary just to know the soils chemistry, because you don't want the foundations to be corroding over the next 25, 30 years. Sometimes we have to put a coat of epoxy on the steel beams. Sometimes we have to put a few in concrete foundations, but for the most part, the steel is just driven straight into the ground. And then finally, complete the interconnection study. Those are the big dollars for just due diligence, potentially up to another $25,000. And this is just the Edison Handbook for completing studies on your behalf. So these are some ideas. I know it was a lot and I went way over my time, but I'd like to continue working with staff, provide at least some analysis, some education, and continue to keep this and vet this opportunity and see if it really is a good deal for the district or not. Sure.
You do all the manufacturing at Milpitas?
Not all. We have manufacturing, a big chunk, being a California opportunity, it's a very high probability the manufacturing will come up from Milpitas, California. But we just opened up a large factory in El Centro. And we have manufacturing in the Philippines, South Africa, and Europe as well. But I can't imagine we're going to take South Africa or European modules and bring them all the way to California. The shipping cost would be a bit much for me.
And what about materials? Where does all your materials for your manufacturing come from?
Yeah, we have several providers for steel, and that's a big chunk of the system is the steel, the torque tubes and the racking hardware, the driven piers, the piles. That's all steel. So we have several different manufacturers. We have long-term agreements with manufacturers. Many of them are U.S.-based. Some of them are imports as well. I'm happy to provide full disclosure on what's coming in and out of the country from what. That list actually is pretty detailed. It gets down to every nut and bolt. But the core component is the modules, which we try to keep in-house.
Anything coming from China?
I have to be fair. It might be some nuanced cable or some piece of plastic or some rivet.
But no steel?
I don't think so. Steel is so heavy and costly to manufacture. We try to keep it as local as we can. Canadian sources as well, Mexico, at least within North America.
How many other companies in California manufacture solar?
That's an interesting question. I thought about that, and I think we might be the only one, maybe.
Is Siemens no longer in California?
Well, they're everywhere. There was a company called Cylindra that I think people have heard about that built a factory and went under. And, full disclosure, we got the same kind of loan from the federal government as well. But that loan was used to build a real project that had a contract, and it was real. What Solyndra did was they wanted to use that money to build a factory without any knowledge of whether they were going to be able to sell their product. So it was a real big failure, I think, and a big blemish on the solar industry. Let's see. I think that we're starting to see crop up. I would admit that there's probably other companies that are starting to creep up. I saw one in Camarillo that started some manufacturing there. There's advantages, at least from a competitive standpoint, to having some of the manufacturing here in the state, just for optics, and I appreciate that. I get that. But we've been a U.S. manufacturer since '85.
What about the water issue of cleaning it off? How much water is used for installation, that type of thing?
I have to get you precise numbers. I promise I will, but there will be water used for dust control, like a typical construction project. And there will be water used for washing the modules.
Who does that?
We do, under an O&M agreement. And that O&M agreement is really up to you guys if you want it just to be 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 20 year. Different customers have different appetites for that. But we would do that. In fact, I'm anxious to see this, but SunPower just developed, through an acquisition, a robotic cleaning tool that basically carries its own water and minimizes the amount of water runoff. I think it even uses such little water, it can use ionized water in that respect. So very clever mechanisms for, it's not a guy with a mop and a hose. You know, it's actually pretty high-tech stuff, and I'm anxious to get some more data on that robotic system. That's recent, like last year acquisition.
Your maintenance, how, you know, we call somebody for maintenance, and it may be a day, it may be 2 or 3 days. Are you Johnny on the spot, or are you a week later?
We have field representatives here in SoCal, and that's what they do. They're meant to be Johnny on the spot. There will be terms in an O&M contract that, for example, you know, under such and such type of event, we have 4 hours to respond, or 24 hours to respond, or 2 days to respond. Like, let's say an inverter went out. That's a major piece of equipment. That would constitute, say, a 4 or 5 hour response time, same day, if you will. But let's say a module was cracked. You could visibly see it was a crack from a rock, a bullet, what have you. We would want more time to basically get our ducks in a row to come out there and replace that module. It's not. It doesn't turn the system production levels down to a level that would even be noticeable. In fact, I don't think our systems would be able to even detect one broken module, because it's one holistic system of, quite frankly, in your case, would be a couple thousand modules.
Are you computerized to notify you or Mark?
Both. We have a 24/7 operations. We have a North American team, and then we have a team in the Philippines. So that way we have this balance of somebody's always awake. We have monitoring systems that are attached. It's also weather, it's performance. And those teams are first notified. They're the first ones to notice if there's a performance issue. And depending upon what it is, if it's a very small event, we might ask if we could contact somebody at the district to say, hey, could you take a look, you know, and just see what this inverter says, for example, if there's some button or do a reset. And if it's something more serious, then it basically comes to our field rep, and our field rep would have to contact the district to come out to the site. We do ask for 24/7 access to the site. Understandably, you know, as a public agency, we do want to try to provide notification, but if we're trying to be very quick and responsive, we try to get 24/7 access to the sites.
Other questions? Director Statham?
I'm very enthused about this possibility. It sounds like if we were to finance it and hire professionals to do the O&M, at the end of the day, month after month, or maybe year after year, we would be spending less than we're spending now to Edison. So I'm thrilled that this possibility is presenting itself finally. My question, Ed, is more about sole source contracting. And how do we, if this is something in principle that the board would like to look into further, are we going to have to talk to get other presentations and other bids, or, you know, is there a sole source issue here possibly? How do we do this?
You know, I would say that staff could look at other vendors, and if we deem that they were qualified, bring them to the board too. You know, let staff do the initial legwork and see who's out there. And then, you know, it would be up to the board. Hopefully, yes, we will look at other companies, but in Mark's research to date, he found that, from what he's looked at, that this SunPower was the best one that was available today. But yes, we would look at other.
Well, I'd like to propose we go the next step, which would be the no cost and the low cost, first two alternatives, where we do the initial $800 consultation with SCE and have Mike provide us with a little more detailed cost estimate.
I can help with that.
And
And like Mike said, he may not be the lowest cost, but because he has the best value because of their instance, how long they last and what it is, that we may be better off paying a little more for this, because in the end, our return on investment's going to be greater.
if we set a standard, then
Right.
Another question. From a standpoint, Ed, and I know, Shane, you're here this evening, and I may be something that's way legitimately out of bounds, but I wonder the possibility of maybe this is something that we could partner with the town on doing something like this. It would get us a bigger facility, more return on our value, and maybe that might something that, it may be crossing some boundaries that can't be crossed, but I wonder if that's something that could be at least looked at, and maybe the town and the water district could kind of partner. This is a big project. It'd be nice if they could partner in this. Maybe it's something we can't do, but maybe just throw that out there that you might just look at that and say, no, it's just not going to work.
We can explore that opportunity.
I like that.
I have another question. Who are the other companies that you look at?
One was forgive me if I don't get these names down right, it was Solar World, and then you mentioned their name earlier.
Borrego, perhaps?
It was Solar, started with Solar again.
Solar City?
Solar City, yeah.
Solar City. Yeah, they're a premier residential developer, really quite good in the residential
does
space.
Solar One do commercial?
I'm sorry?
Solar One, do they do commercial, or are they all pretty much all residential?
I'm not familiar with Solar One, but Mark, do you know about Solar One? Did you talk to them?
Who's your number one competitor?
Well, like, for example, at College of the Desert, which I don't know if you are familiar with that, that's one of our projects. The competitors there were Solar City and Borrego. And that was a competitive solicitation. And I'm happy to compete in an RFP. I do ask that it's a best value RFP, because I can, I can't guarantee I'll be the lowest cost. And that's not always necessarily, I think, the best winner, but
What was the cost at COD? How big was that project?
Recognize that was a, 14-foot elevation
Right.
on the low end, steel, enhanced paint, wire concealment carports. That was, let's see, I'm going to say it was 16 million for 3.8 megawatts. I'm trying to do the math in my head, but can anybody do 16 divided by 3.8? That's like 4.
It's like 4.
It's like $4 a watt. And what I'd like to bring to the district is, frankly, it would be a smaller system, so you don't get quite the economy scales, but I'm targeting about 3.25 a watt. And I'm trying to keep it as, competitive as possible, because I know that if I'm not competitive, that's what's going to be the undoing of, my portfolio of projects. And frankly, I've got a big advantage, because 686 megawatts of this stuff has already been built, engineered, designed, vetted by big financiers like Mid-American Company, Warren Buffett. And so we had to compete in those. And so I'm relying on that technology, that engineering, design, and cost structure to really make me, I hope, not just the best value, but frankly, the most competitive overall.
And next time you're in the lower desert, it's at like Fred Waring and Monterey. It looks pretty good, where they have the street fairs, yes.
I have
Yeah.
a question, and you may not be the right person, you may not know this, but Siemens, do they no longer do commercial, or are they just selling to others, just their products?
You know, I apologize for not knowing more about Siemens, but where I see them a lot is in K through 12 space, and doing a lot of energy efficiency projects. And I see that's a big need, especially at school districts with air conditioning load and doors opening and closing all the time and lights on all the time. I see them, you know, really excelling in that space. But frankly, I haven't seen them at job walks too often. If it's a very difficult commercial building and they want to put it on the roof with other energy efficiency savings tools.
Some years ago, I toured their facility because I was looking at solar
Okay.
for the city of Los Angeles on a project with LED lights. So I kind of wondered, they were really kind of the first movers in a lot of the solar for commercial. So obviously, they've gone off in another direction.
Yeah, it might be just, I got to tell you, it's been a real, what I call, I think I've used this phrase, a knife fight the last two and a half years with the Chinese central government. The Chinese central government have been subsidizing their manufacturers so much that it was driving European and U.S. manufacturers into bankruptcy because we just couldn't keep up with the cost structure. In December of 2012, that stopped through a combination of tariffs, regulations, and the government said, you got to be profitable on your own. That's when we started seeing major Chinese manufacturers go bankrupt. Suntech, Trina's liquidity issues, Yingli, et cetera. So you're the beneficiaries of this knife fight because SunPower really had no choice but to drive our costs down much faster than our roadmaps wanted us to. And now here we are in 2014, and 2013 was a good year too. All that cost reduction and staying in the business and keeping the quality and performance, frankly, turned us from a $5 stock to a $30 stock in 1 year. And so that's something that I think is a testament to the quality and performance of our product. So,
Ms. Sturgis? Hey, Mark?
Okay. You mentioned here on the chart about 4 blocks, and I was just wondering if you can explain whether or not that's, what the size is at 4 acres. And then also, too, here locally in the Morongo Basin, we have many residents who are in favor of rooftop solar, but there's a big push against any type of commercial solar fields. I don't know if this would be considered a solar field, and so if you could address whether or not you've anticipated any pushback from residents in the dust situation. Because you have already inspected this particular area, so perhaps you could be specific to that area.
I think roughly speaking, 1 block of solar.
On the mic, please.
Roughly speaking, 1 block of solar could be considered about an acre, maybe takes an acre and a quarter, so that's about right. Your second question was with regard to, you know, residential versus commercial and large solar fields. And yes, you know, those are concerns that need to be addressed in front of boards and the community because issues such as glare, which, by the way, we put on a very effective anti-glare component on our modules. But that's one issue that does come up and something to be prepared for when that comes. It's noise. These inverters will sound like an air conditioning unit because they have fans on them. Staff, commercial projects will have, depends on how often, it might be once a year or once a quarter, once a month, but an O&M person kind of coming in and out. There might be a truck. So there is a bit more activity on a commercial project than you would find on a residential. And they are larger, they're bigger systems, they're commercial complexes. You guys are familiar with that with doing evaporation ponds and treatment facility development. And so it has a lot of the same features in terms of that. And so yes, it would be considered a commercial project, if you will.
But it wouldn't be the same type of commercial system that some people are proposing to put in solely for the revenue of generating electricity for profit.
Correct. That's what I would refer to as a utility scale system.
Exactly.
And so commercial systems are what I would call behind the meter. Think of the Edison meter as that dividing line between you and the utility. These systems that I bring to my customers are on your side of the meter. and then those systems you just described are on the other side, and they're tapping the high voltage wires. And ResBCT has to be within your district. But these large-scale power plants, they can be virtually anywhere in unincorporated land. And so they have, SunPower has projects like that, frankly. We've got a lot of experience with these very large ground-based projects.
The College of the Desert, you don't hear much noise there. I've been around the carports where the solar's on top, and you hear a little bit, but I don't think there's enough noise to be irritable. And that's a pretty large project.
It's a don't quote me on this, but it might be the largest single-site carport in the country. I haven't been able to find a larger one than that. It's a huge 19-acre parking lot. So you're right. They do create noise, those inverters. By the way, one correction, the system that I would be bringing to a district like yours uses what I call micro-inverters, meaning instead of having one big central inverter that sounds like an air conditioning unit, these would be small inverters peppered all throughout. So they don't have cooling fans, and they're not self-powered. It gets more efficiency, it's the next generation, and these systems are constantly evolving. And the markets are changing too. ResBCT wasn't here a couple years ago. It's here today. There'll be something in the future. So, it's a lot of fun.
Do we need to think in terms of 25 years of replacement or 30 years replacement?
Yeah, in my pro forma, my personal opinion is that the removal cost of removal will be offset by the salvage value. So there'll be metals, steels, things of that nature that'll have some salvage value that, just for simplicity, I assume offsets the cost of removing the system in year 26. But, frankly, the steel foundations are 50-year lives. The copper is 40 and the modules are 30. You have an interconnection with the utility. That's key. So maybe in that many years you're tearing out the SunPower modules and putting in something, SunPower Part 10. So that's...
Like buying a new truck every now and again.
Yes. Any other questions?
So what's our next step?
Yes? Yes, at the microphone, please.
Tammy Rowe with Yucca Valley. The county has just put in a moratorium, I thought, on solar projects, and I think, Shane, doesn't the town also have a moratorium or a ban on solar projects? So they would have to come to the town council to get a waiver? So,
Again, I think that the challenge on large-scale solar projects is the utility-scale projects, not as much the commercial. There's a definite difference there between utility scale and commercial scale. Certainly there'll be issues that we'll have to address with the town, with the state, CEQA, and so on. But I don't honestly see the same type and level of challenges that you might see for a utility project. So do we need a formal vote to kind of explore the next step?
I think just
or-
general direction, there was A and B where I think he can do a plan and we can submit the
$800.
Director Muncy.
and plus $2,500, up to $3,300.
Director Muncy wants to speak.
Thank you. I think 4.2 million amortized over 30 years is pretty cheap. So I think the dollars and cents would be there, but I have the same concerns that have been spoken by the audience in that we can't take our eyes off the gold nugget here, which is the wastewater treatment plant. And I don't think that kind of amortization schedule is going to affect our ability to finance a project at all. However, I do think that we need to be cognizant of public opinion of the district. So as you move forward, I would possibly approach the PAC committee to see what their opinions are. I would be concerned about putting a large scale in Yucca Valley's mind. I know it's very minuscule and everywhere else is in the desert right now. I think it would be detracting towards the district. So I think that may be an issue you want to look at probably with the PAC too. We may want to do this after the wastewater, or we may just want to not do this right now, just not even touch it. So just some considerations.
Any other thoughts? Do we want to progress ahead? Do you want to?
I believe, I'll finish up. I do believe that we should look at this. This is good diligence. I've always been in favor of solar power ever since I went to my first Aqua and actually sat through a presentation with this company. I do believe that the district should do that due diligence to look at that. My only concerns are the political fallout concerns. So I would suggest that you move forward, you look at the two options that Bob suggested, which is the no cost, low cost. And based on the opinion of the PAC committee and possibly coming back to this committee, work on developing an RFQ for.
Right, and make sure the town will allow us to build this.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we have to be a good partner to the town.
Everyone in agreement up here?
I think this is a recommendation. We want a motion in a second and move forward.
Do you need a motion in a second, or just,
You know, I think, and for the dollars amount, I think the direction has been given, and so that it's within my limitation, so we'll move forward on the first two, the no cost and the low cost. And continue our study and looking at other vendors also with solar and talking with the town.
I do want to say that I appreciated Mr. Watley at Aqua. I was able to meet with him a little bit, and he's got a computer program that he can put anything in there, and it changes. You've seen it. It's wonderful, and I appreciate that very much. And thank you for coming tonight. And
Thank you.
We hope to look forward to more progress in the future. And of course, Mr. Coolish is in 29, and so you might be talking to him more too. So who knows? It'll be an interesting time. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Let's go on to, gotta get the right one here. Number 7, Resolution 14-01, update of handbook for employees and directors. Staff recommends that the board approve Resolution 14-01, updating the handbook for employees and directors. Human Resource Manager Jill Trudeau presenting this.
Thank you, President Mays. Am I on? Thank you, President Mays and members of the board. I'll try to keep this very brief. These are mostly housekeeping items. I just did want to explain that one reason that we bring, the reason that we bring these minor operational changes to the handbook before the board is because the handbook is integrated into the district code, which can only be changed by resolution. So even though some of these changes just seem very minor, that is the reason that we bring them forth. That said, very briefly, the internal promotion change is because the staff recognizes that there's a gap between passing the certification test and submitting your application to actually getting the certification in hand. So we wanted to clarify that for the applicants for internal promotion so that they have opportunity to get the promotion even though they don't have the certification in hand. The next 3 items, the vision care, the dental care, and the employee assistance program, we've just changed those to a 30-day waiting period from a 60-day waiting period to tailor that with the medical requirement of Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act to have the waiting period reduced from 60 days to 30 days. It was required on the medical. It wasn't required on these 3 programs, but to bring our programs into all in the same time frame, we were requesting that the board approve those changes to the waiting period.
Bill, may I ask a quick question before we go a whole lot further? And it could only be on mine, but on the very first change, it says candidates for internal promotion must have, that's that right there. Candidates, I have it in red on mine.
Mhm.
Oh, you kind of know where I'm at? On the line right below that, there's a period after exam. It says, or must have passed the exam. There's a little period there on mine.
I have a comma on
Mine says comma. It's faint, but it's a comma.
Okay, just,
It runs into the line of.
okay, no
It
big deal.
does.
What happened.
Yes.
No big deal. I just want to make sure that wasn't, I was kind of hard reading because here it looked like a period. I'm fine.
If you go down, there's actually, it's rewritten without the lines in there, and you can see a little bit easier.
Mhm.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
I very seldom do I ever catch anything. It's proofreading, I was kind of really excited now.
The light must be better in this corner, huh?
Well, Bob always does the proofreading for me, so I thought maybe I could do it too, but I guess not. I'll leave the proofreading to you. Sorry.
Thank you, Director Huff. I guess I was up to scheduling PTO. This change is just reflective of all of the ways that we communicate today, by email, by text, and voicemail, not only just by person-to-person contact on the phone. The important thing, I think, is that we did add that the employee is responsible for ascertaining that the supervisor has received their note that they're going to be out sick that day or have to be off for some unscheduled reason. Finally, the exempt employees change is a little bit complicated insofar as the way we originally perceived it when we wrote regularly scheduled workday. Our regularly scheduled workday is from 7 to 5:30, but exempt employees often will work longer. And we wanted to make sure that it was fair that someone who is working more than the normal workday, even if they started later in the day or they had more time off, would be compensated without having to take personal time off. Ed, I don't know if you can help me clarify that any further.
No, that's exactly it. You don't, an individual may not come, before is if they weren't here between 7 and 12, let's say hypothetically, or they would have to use PTO. But if an individual comes in at 1 and ends up working until 9 or 10 o'clock and actually puts in an 8 or 9 or 10-hour workday, they shouldn't have to use 5 hours of PTO. But if they do work less than 5 hours for the entire day, then they would use PTO for the balance.
It sort of just makes the way the thing works a little bit more fair. That concludes my staff report, and I'll be happy to take questions from the board after public comments.
Is there anyone in the public that would like to make comment about this? No? Okay, let's come back to the board. Is there any comments or questions from any of you? Director Muncy, do you have a comment?
Now, I'll just move approval of Resolution 14-1, Attachment A.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Directors Muncy and seconded by Director Graham. Roll call, please.
Director Huff, Vice President Statham,
Yes.
President Mays,
Yes?
Director Graham,
Yes.
and Director Muncy.
Yes.
Thank you. Passed. Let's go on to number 8, vacuum excavator purchase. Staff is recommending that the board authorize the general manager to accept the lowest bid and approve the purchase of one trailer-mounted vacuum excavator as submitted by RDO Veermeer in the amount of $68,376.40. And Assistant General Manager, Mark Ben.
Thank you, President Mays, members of the board. Staff developed and released a request for proposals for the purchase of one vacuum excavator. These were sent to 2 known vacuum manufacturers, RDO Vermeer and Ditch Witch, and it was also advertised within the San Bernardino Sun. On the bid closing date, we actually received 3 bids from 2 respondents. The lowest bid, meeting all specifications, coming from RDO Vermeer in the amount of $68,376.40. The 2 bids from Ditch Witch, the first one being the highest bid, actually did not meet our specifications, and the third was so small that it wasn't even considered by the district at the time, but I thought I would include it just for transparency purposes. So with that said, staff is recommending the board approve the purchase of the RDO Vermeer V800 HD vacuum excavator in the amount of $68,376.40. I'll be happy to answer any questions after public.
Any public comment? Thoughts, questions? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Is there any questions here? Comments? Director Statham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have one question. I noticed that you have this as part of the current year budget. Was there a specific budget amount that was budgeted for this item?
Right, originally, we had budgeted $60,000 based upon a prior purchase of a similar vacuum. However, the current specifications that the district was looking for, we came back to the board and asked for an increase of $10,000. So we're actually, for the approved budget for this item, we've come in under budget.
Perfect.
Any other questions, comments?
I move approval of this agenda item.
Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Muncy and seconded by Director Huff. Roll call, please.
Director Statham, or Vice President Statham.
Yes.
President Mays,
Yes?
Director Graham. Yes. Director Muncy,
Yes.
and Director Huff.
All right. Let's go on to number 9 as wastewater updates. Assistant General Manager Mark Ben.
All eyes forward on our assessment district report. We've been staying in close contact with Albert Webb and Associates. All of our consultants are working closely with them right now, and that's the main view and focus right now. We're still expecting that report to come to the district at the end of this month here for review. So, BB&K, we had 3 attorneys and 1 paralegal, I believe, accompany Jennifer and myself around town for review of the project on their dime, I might add, just to get a lay of the land. And then also because we're focused so much on the 280 easements that the district will have to acquire, they wanted to get some kind of an idea of how far setbacks would be and things like that around town. If you want to discuss some more about some PR.
We had our public information meeting on wastewater outreach and went over the 2014 outline for outreach. And we also completed taping our wastewater educational video yesterday. I think we started at 7:30 and went all the way to 5. So Mark and I, it's a long day. But we completed it, and we're expecting to have the video probably the mid-February.
Excellent.
Anything else?
And then we met with a consultant that we hired to take a look at our engineering estimates for the construction of the collection system. And our goal is to, I think the first meeting in March, to bring his report to the board to show a comparison about our engineer's estimates versus hiring High Desert Water District employees and installing the collection system ourselves.
Very good.
I understand yesterday that Jennifer could have used, somebody off of a movie set that kind of freshened her up. She was pretty wiped out at the end of the day.
I think that was because of the wind. And she didn't sleep the night before. She was too nervous.
Any other comments? Let's go on to number 10 then, and reports and comments, director's reports and comments. Director Huff. Anything?
The one I have is public information. I don't know from a perspective exactly where Jennifer wants to be with that, so I will say we had a public information meeting, but I think there was so much information that I think probably Jennifer should present that. I think she should present when she is ready for that. I'm not sure everything is really up to snuff on that, so I'll let you kind of do that, because I see all your paperwork and everything, so maybe that's supposed to be for another evening, so I will wait for another evening then before but she's done a great job, so I appreciate that.
Director Muncy.
Just want to thank the Town of Yucca Valley Intern General Manager Shane Stuckel for being here tonight. It was very nice to see the town participating.
Director Statham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had one more thought, consideration, question maybe on the possible solar project. I did a little research a year or so ago, and it seems to me, don't quote me on the exact number, but as I recall, approximately 89% of the electricity generated and used in the state of California is from fossil fuels. And so if we were to go to solar energy generation, I think that doesn't use fossil fuels. And it seems like the handwriting on the wall with global warming issues and whatnot, with carbon use and carbon offset, there might be some additional value to a solar project in terms of carbon offsets that could be used, whether that's now or in the near future. So if we could just have that on our radar and look to see what is in place now and what might be coming down the road in terms of carbon offsets to add additional value to a possible solar project.
Okay, Director Graham.
Well, I'll just make a few comments about the public information meeting that we had last week with myself and Director Huff. I was extremely pleased about the quality of the work that Jennifer and CD Strategies has done. There were some very, very minor changes that Director Huff and I discussed, but the way it was presented and the look of the materials that will be going out were just really first class. I'm sure all the directors will be very pleased when she presents the final to us to look at before it hits the road, so to speak. But there was a lot of work put into it, a lot of materials developed, and it was impressive, very impressive. And I know for a while I was a little skeptical because we weren't getting enough to really look at, and all of a sudden we were on overload. So thank you for that. Monday, I attended a workshop required by law on sexual harassment and harassment. And there's a number of changes coming about. And I'm sure as you go to the new ones, you'll be also finding out about the changes. One of the things that was very interesting, there was a discussion about third party being involved in possible lawsuits. In other words, customers of the district, clients of the district, vendors, contractors are considered third parties. And we as directors are considered that this is our workplace. So if you are harassed by anybody that's considered third party, you most certainly have the right to sue for that harassment. And one of the things that was a hot topic with everybody there was, of course, technology, meaning social media, and how that's affecting, because there's been a number of cases where some people think that social media gives you the right for free speech. Well, now the courts are looking at that probably more stricter. It's not as liberal as it started to be. So that includes internet, email, voicemail, text messages, blogs, anything that goes out as social media. And the National Labor Relations Board has been really looking at this on how social media versus free speech. And so I gave a couple of examples to the attorney that was doing this, who's apparently written a number of books. And some of the things that we talked about, for example, somebody cannot use social media to discriminate on your age. For example, somebody could not say, and I'm going to give a hypothetical, and I'll use me as an example. If somebody wanted to put out on social media in any of those formats that it's time for me to retire off of the water board because of my age, they would be liable for a lawsuit as third party. So, and it's not freedom of speech. And I asked that to be clarified, and I gave a couple of other examples using, if a board member was this, if a board member was that. So it's very interesting, and I think when you go through your next training, there'll probably be some more changes in there. But the attorney from BB&K, who was the facilitator and the one who provided all the information, he was very knowledgeable. There were a lot of questions from other agencies. There was probably maybe 12 to 15 of directors from different districts. And I went down to Indian Wells because that was the closest place, but Ontario probably had 7 or 8 directors there. So I think right now what we need to do is be very careful. I talked to Jill a little bit about, making sure that our supervisors and our workers are up to date on all the changes and so forth, so that, we as a district will make sure that we're doing all the things that we need to do. Other than that, the only other thing I have will be under future agenda items, so thank you.
Thank you. All right, I have a number of things tonight. Congratulations to our district. This is from Walter Andy Sells of JPIA, and it's each year at Fall Conference, the JPI recognizes members that have a loss ratio of 20% or less in either of the liability, property, or workman's compensation programs. The members with this distinction receive the Presidential Special Recognition Award, and so therefore tonight we have been given a certificate for this. We've given actually 2 of these in different areas of our insurance coverage. So I commend the staff and for all of their work. We have another certificate that has been received for our staff from the California Highway Patrol. This was dated in November 19th. This is for our Department of Transportation Drivers Program and also coverage of the drug coverage and testing and so forth. And we've got a certificate from the California Highway Patrol. I have a letter here to the presidents of the boards of directors of independent special districts. This is from LAFCO. If there's any individuals that would like to put their names in for a position on the LAFCO board, there is a position open, and there's certain dates and so forth. If you're interested, please let me know.
Isn't that for general public?
General public as well, any individual there. I want to say thanks to Mark Van, to Ron, to Mike, John and Kim, Tanya, and to Rochelle, all who were part of the individuals that bought the gifts from the Christmas luncheon and provided it for the community. And it was the staff of 36 raised $690 for that project. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. That's wonderful. I did attend the Mojave Water Agency. If you're interested in the State Water Project, Action Project, here's the information. And I will give you an update concerning my meeting that I attended on January 9th. Lance gave an update of the Integrated Regional Water Management Program. There have been 129 different projects submitted. 63 projects were combined into 15. He discussed the report card. Everyone has to report progress on their projects at their next meeting in February, which will be February 6th, I believe. They will be presenting a draft public review document with the intention of having the document adopted in June of 2014. A resolution was passed to submit a matching fund grant with the Bureau of Reclamation for $1 million. It's a 50% matching grant. They plan to use the funds from Proposition 84 funds to fulfill the matching funds requirement. The purpose of the grant is for cash for grass for larger commercial projects like golf courses, schools, etc., large groups. Part of the requirement was authorization from the board. Any commitments for cash for grass won't kick in until after the signing of the contracts. The board passed a resolution supporting the Association of California Agencies statewide water action plan, which I mentioned before, and you can look at this. Director Hall said, after reviewing it, he said it's lofty ideas, it's affecting the ecosystem, very expensive, but we need to work together. His hope was that when it was passed in the state, that it would not be passed along to districts to actually pay for it. One of those unfunded mandates as you go along. I am sorry to report that Jim Ventura on New Year's Day reached for his billfold after ordering fast food at a fast food restaurant here in the basin. Pain came into his arm. When he got home, his arm was swollen the size of his his leg. A blood vessel had broken in his arm. He's recovering from that. So I mentioned that. I attended the PAC meeting on Monday night, January 13th. There were 10 members that were present. John Brabowski was a re-elected chair, or chairman. Art Miller was co-chair. Thomas Carvelis was elected secretary. A lengthy discussion was held regarding water reserves. Mr. Horn had a lot of questions regarding the numbers on the report. Mark Van gave an up-to-date report on the wastewater project. We are at 80% data transfer level. 280 easement acquisitions are being considered in phase 1. Jennifer Poland is working on a script for a 3-minute video YouTube presentation online, DVDs, Channel 10, as well as 4 wonderful pamphlets. One person brought up about the solar farm's potential on the Mesa. They use a lot of water in grading and installation, but then washing the panels thereafter. The concern was that they could take valuable water supplies from our community. It was stated that Bighorn would use 15% of their output on one solar field. One of the members was concerned about the outreach for the wastewater project to out-of-town owners of properties, not just the local ones. General Manager Ed Music said we are to receive 5% of the allocated water from the state water project, which is about 620 acre-feet. If it goes up for some miraculous reason, up to 15%, we would receive about 2,950 acre-feet. Another member mentioned about the water pollution in West Virginia. It was stated that we have thought that water was a right, but in essence, it's really a privilege. Places like Africa don't even have free running water. So, thank you. And now we'll go to the staff reports, and we'll go with Assistant General Manager Mark Ben.
One more comment on our tariffs. The district utilizes through Edison too. Another advantage of solar, I guess. We play a lot of back and forth with a lot of our accounts to make sure that we're utilizing the most efficient account on an annual basis with Edison. And normally when they raise their rates, it's for those who are pumping on the peak hours. Well, now Edison is planning on raising our rates 4% for those who are pumping on non-peak this year. So kind of getting penalized for using off-peak settings. Our construction staff assisted with San Bernardino County Fire on some trench rescue training this week. Very informative and good time doing that.
Let's go to Human Resources, Jill Trudeau. Thank you. Let's go to Chief Financial Officer Rochelle Clayton.
Good evening. I am very pleased to present the submission, to report on the submission to our grant application to the Bureau of Reclamation for a $4 million grant. I'm hopeful for us to get at least some award. The cap of that grant application is $4 million, so anything will help at this point. I have another grant application that I'm hoping to submit at the beginning of February, and that's for water conservation. So I'm working on that now. And next week, Mark and I will be up in Sacramento meeting with our project manager for the SRF loan, along with Clean Tech and Carollo staff. So we'll get a project up or a status update and a good conversation going next week.
Very good. Thank you. Let's go on to Public Information Associate Jennifer Poland.
Today, Mark and I went to Yucca Valley High School. We had a presentation with the environmental class, and it was really interesting because we went there to talk about the process of water, and we got quite a few questions about the wastewater reclamation project, so we were able to answer a lot of those questions. Right now, staff's been working with Southwest on getting meetings available on the website. We came this close to making it to this meeting, but we ran into a little snag, so I'm hoping by next month we'll have meetings available online to view. That's all I have.
Very good. General Manager Ed Music.
We had an interesting meeting with a vendor for radio reads again. You know, we thought it was going to be too expensive because we looked at the total cost, but the initial cost to get going is going to be a lot less, so we're going to take that to the Finance Committee meeting and hopefully then bring it to the board to get us started with this process, basically if we buy the software, which is somewhere around 20 to 25,000, we can add incrementally meters, like we're replacing 150 meters up on the mesa where we put in some new pipe that's very difficult to read. So we thought that'd be a perfect place to put these radio reads and try it and see how it works. And then as we further go on, we can expand at a much slower pace. So we don't, I think initially the price tag was like $2 million to do the entire district. So we'll bring that to the Finance Committee. And then we had a meeting with Mojave regarding Prop 84. You know, we've submitted, I think, three requests, and we haven't been funded any of them. They keep bouncing back, but now we're under the impression that the Department of Water Resources is getting a little pressure to start dispersing the funds, so hopefully we'll see the money coming in from Prop 84 for the wastewater project. And then tomorrow I have a regional board meeting down in in the Palm Desert, and part of on the agenda we're going to be starting the review process for the executive officer.
Okay. Before we go to the future agenda items, I just want to mention that in our foyer, we are blessed with artwork with kindergarten through 6th grade of Morongo Valley. And so I want to recognize those children that have done a wonderful job, and if you get a chance, stop by and see those. Let's go on to number 11, future agenda items requested by the board. Anyone? Anything? Director Graham?
Yeah, I do. I would like to put on a future agenda item to consider a new format for general manager performance evaluation. While I was at Aqua, I did I took it on as a personal survey and talked to about 9 different water agencies to see what kind of a format that they had and what they did. I think the one that we have, I don't know how long it's been used here, but I find it to be very cumbersome and hard to sometimes understand really what the question is and how to respond to that question and the rating. So just for your information, I got one from Mojave Water Agency, which they do it very similar to, he's already got one, to what we do, but the format is a little more simpler. And the fact that the board actually gets together and discusses. And that's what I find a disadvantage for me, is because I get to read how you rate, but I don't get to interact with the directors to understand how you got to where you were. And I think that that this is something that I would like for us to take a look at and to consider, and maybe have a closed session in the near future to talk about other ways that we might do it that might be more efficient for us, more effective, and we might come up with a whole nother system just based on the conversation that we would have.
Anything else?
That's the only thing I have. Thank you.
Director Muncy.
Just in the course of that, Special Districts has a best practice model for that. If maybe that can be presented to the board as well.
Sure. Any other comments, questions? All right, we will adjourn this meeting at 7:46. Thank you for coming. Happy New Year, and just have a wonderful time. Thank you for coming tonight.